I'm Dean Kuchar. I'm the liaison for libraries for Archie Comics. So I'm your contact on a day-to-day basis. If there's anything we can do to support you, I may have reached out to you in the past because I work for Nancy Silberkreit, who's the co-CEO of Archie Comics, and she's going to be our keynote today. And I just wanted to, just let you know that we're here to support libraries. We really value the work that you do with children, and I'm going to turn it over to Nancy, and I'll be here during the presentation helping Nancy running slides and showing comic books and things, making it fun. So take it over, Nancy.
Well, zam, wham, wow, something only a comic book publisher gets to say. But I do want to send a deep zam, wham, wow to Westchester Library System for arranging this Zoom session. But I'm Nancy Silberkreit, co-CEO of Archie Comics, and this first slide is here to show my shoes that I wore for 25 years as an elementary art teacher. It was that experience that helped make me transition into business. And if I can just stop there, I don't see the slides, Dean. Do you have that slide up? Oh, I can't even hear Dean.
Sorry, Nan.
Okay, but he'll get those shoes up, and maybe if I could see them. But it's those shoes that I wore as a teacher that helped me transition into business. It provided me the skill of patience. I was going into a family business. Archie Comics has been a family business for 80 years. So I put those shoes up because I want you to each think about the shoes you stand in. You are all part of a profession that makes a real difference. Your profession offers many ways to make a positive difference in the lives of people. You are all ambassadors to showing us information and how to access it. Elena's teaching me so much about Zoom, and there's so much that you all hold for communities, huge communities that you are connected to. So you each make an impression, a deep impression on other people's lives. And I carry a very special story that I hope that, will, become part of your heart. I'd like to share this story about a gentleman I met from India. He was in New York, but he was over the moon to share with me that he read every Archie comic. He emphasized the word, every. He had a deep connection to Archie Comics. And Dean, we could go back to my shoes.
Okay.
Because we're talking about the librarian shoes.
Got it.
And, because of this deep connection, and he had read every Archie Comics, I naturally asked, would it be possible to arrange for me to see his Archie collection? His response was, Mom, I have never owned an Archie comic. I've never bought an Archie comic. It was my librarian who ordered all my Archie comics. So that story has been with me for a long time now. And I hope you will remember how important it is for the shoes of a librarian. They connect to so many different lives. So, it's, very special to me to be able to share that story with you and how you do make a big difference in the lives of people. But there's something in my shoes when I stepped in Archie Comics that was lacking. I had never read an Archie comic. I had never read comic books. And we can go to the next slide of the wonderful Archie characters. So as a co-CEO, I had to start bringing home those comic books and reading them. I was not looking forward to that. But I soon found myself piling up ones that made me laugh, piling up ones that I wanted to be sure to read again. I could never get that, why people reread their Archie comics. But I was getting it. I was finding ones that I wanted to read again. I made other piles with important life lessons. And I kept creating these piles. But I soon found that I didn't have enough to read. I started going to libraries and checking out books. I also started buying books. I most recently just bought this book about, I was in a bookstore about 2 months ago. Thank goodness I could go in, and I bought this book. But I started visiting libraries, checking out books, buying books. I found the love of reading at age 54 by just turning the pages of comic books. So I started thinking about, where was I when, comic books were introduced? Many times it's the 8-year-old. So I started going back to, where was I at that age? And I happened to remember down to the detail of what I was wearing. I was stepping up. I was going into 2nd grade. And I remember exactly what I was wearing. I was looking smart. I was excited. And when we got, I even remember to, this one section of the school where I was standing. It was at the corner of the kindergarten playground. And I saw my friends where I was supposed to go. It was marked off 2nd grade, and I was ready to bolt over there. And my mother tugged my hand and said, "No, you're not going over there. You're going over there. You're going to the 1st grade section. You're repeating 1st grade. You have been left back because you cannot read." That's when it was announced to me I was going to be repeating another year of grade 1 because I had difficulty reading. You can show the next slide. That's not me, but that was the heart of what I was struggling with. I had a lot of difficulty with reading. So at that moment when I had found the love of reading at age 54, the light bulb in my head clicked. It was a loud click. The revelation for me was dramatic and deeply personal. It pushed me to come up with a solution. My mission has been to get comic books into the hands of people. We can see the next slide, please. I found when people are given a comic book or they're checking a comic book out at a library, by the time they get to checkout, they're already reading that page. I also thought maybe insurance may be required because they're just walking around reading and they're going to bump into something. So I hope accidents haven't happened. But it has been my mission to, get comic books into the hands of people, because I never want to see, where you saw that image of, someone trying to, get into learning how to read. I believe comic books with that plus sign, comic books plus children equal reading. And that was my first quote. But as I went on, I started feeling, then, you have knowledge. You have the feeling of knowledge. And once you have knowledge, you have confidence. And once you have confidence, you have creativity. I believe in utilizing the oldest language around. we can look at the next slide. Hieroglyphics. It's one of the oldest languages around. The minimal text found in speech bubbles. We could go on to the next slide. Speech bubbles. Alongside of speech bubbles are the rich graphics. It provides a space I refer to as the gray area. This is where the reader is engaged into expanding the story. Reading is a complex literary read. One's thoughts, ideas, opinions, values emerge, naturally deepening the comprehension. Comic books are a complex literary experience. Graphics trigger the brain for analysis. Graphic novels can dramatically improve reading development, hook one in to that love of reading. It provides contextual clues, emotional context to information being provided. And let's not forget the English language learners and how they can be motivated by graphic novels, helping them acquire a new vocabulary and increase English proficiency. I remember seeing an Archie comic book with Miss Beasley with a cookbook, plethora of recipes on how to bake potatoes. I didn't have to resort to a dictionary, which I would resort to many times, because I had the backup of visuals. Going on to the next slide that shows a visual, how many times did I need to be told about reducing my use of single-use plastics? It was that visual. I had never been a tree hugger, but it was that visual that just clicked something in me to realize I was using too much single-use plastic. I think I saw one of our visitors, Elena from, I forget which library, and she had her plastic water bottle. That used to be me, but once I saw this visual, I started changing and becoming, an individual that maybe could make a change. Going on to the next panel, that has no words, but if you wanted to help explain to someone about bullying, we have various learning styles, such as the autistic mind, that may need support for, the example on bullying. This would be a great emotional context to, go that further step in explaining. So comic books are integrated in curriculum, especially in the areas of English, science, social studies, and art. The U.S. has the Common Core standards asking teachers and librarians to remember to introduce graphic literacy. I introduced a new character into Archie Comics. She represents autism. I thought another wonderful way to help support the autistic minds and getting their message out that autism is just one part of who they are. So a patron or a parent or a teacher that comes in says, I'm looking for information on autism. This may be a great icebreaker. MIT always says that they require their learners to pick up comic book. It recharges your batteries. So I feel it's a great way to be a segue into many other topics, such as bullying, autism, or science project, or history. So the last panel, and then we can take a little break for questions, is stories change hearts. Stories change minds. Stories provide hope. So the next time you see a superhero movie, remember, comics are not just about getting the bad guy. It's a brilliant path to engage one into information. And I deeply believe in building a connection to finding that love to reading. So thank you all for, being such good listeners with this new platform on Zoom. With our wonderful platform with Hoopla, I want you all to know, we have books. It's just not your typical comic books, but we have so many. The Marinette Library has an amazing display, and she always has those teens coming in because she has created a very special section to highlight Archie. So we got big, heavy books that can have the wear and tear of all those patrons that come into your library.
I just wanted to say that a lot of you know, and I'll mention it again later, that there's this program that I do called Breath, Body, Mind to help people to de-stress. But one of the things I noticed as you were talking, and when we talked about comics as a way of relaxing, and we're all a bunch of readers, and it never, since I know that the brain listens to the lungs, and that generally when I'm reading, my posture is one of relaxation. I mean, I look towards reading to chill out, and I just, realize that that's changing my breathing, moving it down. My brain then realizes I'm not stressed out. So, I mean, we're all reading for our health. Consider that. All right.
And as I travel around the world, I have had many heartwarming stories where people have told me that it was like mental therapy for them. One young lady told me she was an adult, but she had grown up in an abusive family, and it was her time to escape. I heard many stories like comic books was a time for them to escape.
Hey, Elena. This is Krishna. It looks like we have some questions in the chat from Kara Lipari. There's comics and graphic novels are favorites among my students. How can we share access to reading materials during this time when libraries and stores are closed? Are there digital options?
Can I answer some of that? There are libraries out there. I happen to have an opportunity to be on a radio show in Washington, through this. And I had told the first 12 people to contact me, let me know their favorite comic book store, and I'll send you a comic. So I was out there to many comic book stores around the country, and there are some that are open just through, getting in touch with them through email. As for the library, Elena will, tell you that the library is open to get books through Hoopla, right, Elena?
Yes, indeed. And we're going to actually feature. Dean's going to start sharing his screen so he can show the Archie comics and how you can find them on Hoopla, and then I'll sort of follow through with Comics Plus as another route. The thought of getting actually print materials, though, like a print comic book into someone's hand, that's something let's come to at the close when we talk about programming that we can do now.
Okay. And I also would like to say, I love giving out my contact. Anyone can contact me, nancy.archiecomics@gmail. I can connect you to our Archie website, which is, giving great discounts and sending out comic books. But I also have five Scarlet stories that are only digital. They are not in print, and they are to spark conversation on autism and to give support to the autistic population. And I have some teacher study guides that go with Archie comics and some other things that I give out for free. So people are welcome to connect with me if they're looking for some material.
Patricia M in the chat asked, is there any free e-access to comics for kids at home without library cards?
Let's come back to that question at the end of this, can we? Because that's something we can talk about in terms. If I want to get Nancy's part going. Dean, you can take it away.
Well, we're going to answer, if there's more questions, we're happy to go through the questions now, because what Nancy's going to do next is actually, well, I'm going to pull up a couple comics just from Hoopla, just to show how they work, and then Nancy's going to take you through them. Do you want to do that now, Elena?
Yes, and
Okay.
the question about the library card access is, one, library cards can be had by going to the library, right? Many of you have an online option, and there's some new options to just do an e-only card. But if that question is coming in from a librarian or actually I didn't see it, there it goes, Patricia M. If that's from a librarian, that's one thing. If it's from the school, then it's a matter of coordination, and I'm happy to talk about it one-to-one.
Okay.
When we're done. So Patricia, I'm gonna send you a message.
Okay, well, I'm sharing right now. This is the main page of Hoopla, and just so you can see, I've taken out a couple books. These two I've already borrowed, with a library card. That's the beauty with Hoopla. There's also a service called Comic Plus that works very similarly, but I'm going to show Hoopla today. So anybody with a library card can search Archie Comics. We have hundreds and hundreds of titles on there. Now, I've picked out two of them just now that Nancy, I'm going to pull up on the screen, and I'm going to let Nancy just show you what she thinks are really great ways to use comics with young people in your libraries. So, Nancy, which one do you want me to start with? How about if I start with this one?
Couldn't you start with the one to the other side,
This one, Archie's Funhouse. You got it. And so what happens when you come in to Hoopla, you get the comic, and then it says resume. So wherever you left off reading, you can click on it like that. I'll also show you, you can use your iPhone. It's very friendly for an iPhone, which a lot of kids will use. So,
okay, I'll talk about this one, Dean.
Okay.
You know, every time I pick up an Archie Digest, I go, oh my gosh, you know, our team at Archie who put this together, it's just so fabulous. So this was a story that was sparked by me. As I said, I was never a tree hugger. And then once I saw that visual, I wanted to start getting at the message more about our, you know, overuse of single-use plastics, to see if I could encourage people to find alternative ways. So I had heard the country Rwanda, and you can see in the little corner there, there's an ambassador from Rwanda with a map, and that they had banned plastic bags. This was going back maybe 7 years ago. So this was not too wise, but I got on a plane. It was my global carbon footprint is terrible. But I went to Rwanda to see for myself, and I came back with the information. And Batten Lash, one of our great writers who has passed away 2 years ago, wrote this story, Getting Drastic with Plastic, for me. So that's in here, and I have a teacher's study guide that's free. So if you check it out at the library through Hoopla, contact me, because I have a teacher's study guide that can help you get the most out of these panels. So I see in this one story, you can utilize map skills, history, women in government positions. So there's many segues that this comic book can lead to, because remember, it's at MIT that they say reading comic books recharges your battery. So it doesn't have to be particularly about environment or science. You can talk about, hey, in that panel, there's an ambassador from Rwanda, and then do studies on, women in positions like this. It's just a fabulous segue to open up conversation, because it's engagement that is key to learning. How we engage one, how we draw one into the conversation is key. Then going to the first page of this comic book takes place about on the road again. Archie and friends find themselves in the Philippines. Little did I know.
I'll go right there now. Here we go. Page 2. This is how you move around. Okay.
Little did I know I was going to be a keynote speaker in the Philippines. So thank goodness, I had something to fall back on with Archie, that they had been in the Philippines. Then I really believe also in one, having a hobby or a sport. I think that's very important. So for me to tell you it's very important to have a hobby or sport, I feel if I said, hey, I found this great story. I think, Dean, it's on page 65.
You got
So
it.
on page 65, here is Raj Patel, Science Flair Drama. Again, you could go into one of the academics and talk about science, or you could go into culture. But what I see is Raj Patel with a camera in his hand. I always see Raj filming. That's part of his intellectual property. He's passionate about filming. So you could talk about hobbies and interests there. So again, this story can lead to many different topics such as science, hobbies, culture. And one of my favorite stories is about character development. It's Betty here in Trendsetter. Dean, that's on page 163. This is a wonderful story to talk about one's social behavior. If you're going to talk about bullying, how we treat someone, you've lost the kids. Hey kids, I just found a great story. Let's all read it today. It's called Trendsetter. And Archie finds a hat and he feels it's a little off, but he's going to be bold and he's going to wear it. It was his decision to wear that story. And that story, I think, I don't know if it's, I think if we put up 2 pages, it's there for you to, or we have 4 pages, we can read, you can read it for free right there. But the last page I didn't put up because I would like you to finish the story, and I'm not going to tell you how it ends, but I was shocked, and it's a great story for character development, how you bring up character development, how you develop the intellectual property of your characters. You have to be very consistent. And here at the end, it was not very consistent. I was shocked. So that is all what you can, that's what you can find in this little digest. There's probably other stories in Digest 26 that you can utilize in other academic areas. And lo and behold, Dean, you can bring this one up.
And now I'll go back to the main page.
One
This is
came out long before we heard about the coronavirus. And what do you see here? Everyone in the audience wearing a mask. It's a little spooky that we had this story. It came out a long time ago, decades and decades ago, but we reprinted it recently, way before the coronavirus. But if you get a patron, a mother, or a teacher that comes in and says, you know, I really feel that I have to address coronavirus, but I don't want to do it to frighten or stress anyone out anymore. So this is not talking about coronavirus, but Dilton, who's always interested in science, is, you know, talking about germs, about handshaking and kissing. So that's the little, you know, chuckle in there, but a great way to kind of ease the segue into coronavirus and let someone get lost with thoughts of, you know, how germs can spread with handshaking or kissing. That we get a lot of giggles. And again, kind of relax the conversation. So I'm very proud to be part of Archie and me. And I always try to wear a little bit of orange as developing my IP, that, you know, my face belongs to Archie. And it's such, you know, a treasure to be, you know, propelling my husband's legacy, Michael I. Silberkreit, who passed away in 2008. And I had stepped in on March 28, 2009. And it's been quite a challenge. But again, it was the shoes of a school teacher that really helped me, you know, helps me hang in there. And again, I want all of the librarians to know how, special and dynamic your shoes are. You hold a lot of power. And now you're going to be able to connect all the readers at home through Hoopla to the books that you have in your library and help them find the love of reading. So thank you.
Oops, I lost my screen.
Okay.
Weren't you, Nancy, you were also going to go over Riverdale, yes?
Oh, Riverdale, yes. We have really, again, had a resurge of interest in Archie through the TV shows Riverdale. We have Riverdale, The Chilling Tales of Sabrina. Now we have Katie Keene. And this has drawn a huge interest into, the classic Archie, because other generations are shocking the young people that are, streaming these on Netflix and the CW channel. And they're having this debate that, no, that's my Archie. And the other people watching Riverdale are saying, no, that's my Archie. So they're having a conversation with their grandparents and their parents that how they know Archie, because the intellectual property of Archie on Riverdale is very dark. And Archie Comics started out in 1941 with a formula. And the formula was to create a little bit of chaos, but let the teens figure it out. But the chaos always had to reflect the decade. So as we go through, the decades, we first started out with the hula hoop skirts and the mod area, then the cell phones, now you see the texting. But in Riverdale, it's following the decade. We have, abuse with opioids and drugs and all this other dark stuff. And that platform of that TV show has really brought that in. And it's a great way, again, to, talk about these issues. How do you bring up the conversation about drugs? And you'll find it in Riverdale. But you'll find that we have paired this show with books. So there it is, all on Hoopla. And I happen to be in a library in Texas, and the librarian and I were talking about these books that were on their shelves and available on Hoopla. And a teen walked by and saw the book she was showing me, and she was ecstatic. That's my book. That's my show. I watched that. We said, well, we have books. I want them all. And there she was, taking them away from us because she was going to check them out. So now you have it on Hoopla, and thank you for putting that up. There's a lot of content on Riverdale, and Riverdale has drawn in a new, a young group. And Ellen from Amereneck Library can tell you, she has my Hoopla, she has my book forum, she has me come in to speak. I love coming in to speak at your libraries. So if you just want to have a special talk with me through Zoom until, we can start coming back, reach out with me. Or if you just want to, contact me privately and have a little conversation over tea, I would be delighted. So thank you.
Thank you for that, Nancy. I have a couple of comments that are coming in, and it's kind of fun because it links to what we're going to talk about next. Someone's Ria Aquena is sort of pointing out the annual free comic book day, the first Saturday in May. Unfortunately, this year's event was postponed, and Riverdale was one of the comics that was going to be made available. I don't think I would have pushed Archie as hard had it not been for the Riverdale series with different audiences. So that really helped to make it contemporary and accessible. That crossover between the media was really key. So actually, and there was also a flag here about Shonen Jump. So we talked about manga briefly. Okay, so there's I mentioned my daughter ate manga. Actually, she still does. That is her relaxation moment. Now with a master's in public health and everything else, she still will pick up she still will devour a manga series online. And if you guys aren't familiar with, I don't have all those sites posted, but there's this whole sort of subculture of translated manga from Japan that gets translated sort of like as a community effort, and then they wind up on the screen. So I'm sure it's not legal, but but there's contraband in comic books in that sense. The Shonen Jump, a site that I'm going to share my screen now, a site that Rio shared. Let me go to my browser. Here you go. They do offer free chapters for different series. I know that these books are in many of your libraries. And what this highlights for me, though, and it's really, I struggle with this, is the digital divide. Of course, my privileged daughter was able to, had an iPad or a tablet and was able to, jump in and devour this stuff. She also got I think a MacBook in her high school, which, Chromebooks and MacBooks are happening out there, but not for everyone. So that's certainly of concern. And that's for some libraries that are actually loaning out some devices, that's really great too. Okay, someone else was.
And Elena, I'd like to say that, books will always be around. Comic books will always be around, in the hard paper, because it's a hobby. It's a collector's item. It's a huge collecting item. And some people like, to turn the pages, such as I do. But we have other people, and it's not just a young age, it's many ages, it's vast, that do like to experience the digital. So we'll always have it strongly in both format. So I don't look at it as a divide. It's just a personal preference.
And for those of you who haven't really, gone on to look at this, if you do have a tablet or, and certainly do this on your computer, I really encourage you to make an account and go spelunking on your own to see what's of interest. I needed to go digging to find out what I would like. I'm a big Neil Gaiman fan, for example, so that those graphic novels are available on Hoopla and Comic Plus is like a wonder to me. So the Archie comics, Obama and Palin in Riverdale, cool. So you can, log in and, simply check out one of these. I think we have added credits for everything. And if I go into my comics, this is for Comic Books Plus, I can read now and pop right in there. And it's it's very usable on a computer. I find it to be a bit more satisfying with a tablet because it continues to do that sense of holding the book close or a comic close. But
Elena, and
yep.
This goes to the teacher and me. How do we engage one into learning? How do we engage them into the love of reading? So, here is a political platform. So if I'm going to start off my class on politics, I am sure, I used to dress up in costume as a teacher. But if I was going back, I would have comic book reading going on all the time before I ever went into any academic area. Because I think it just relaxes you and it makes the experience welcoming.
That's where I wanted to go. Okay, and I just messed up because I guess with my mouse, I just made the type font too large, but make sure you of course, before you demonstrate it on a certain device, make sure you know how to use it. But yes, I agree, Nancy, and I also wanted to show something that's not an Archie comic in here. So Comic Books Plus, I mentioned I'm a real Neil Gaiman fan. There's, I've used more dark stories, I guess, with some adult literacy groups. So I've used Archie comics, and I've also, asked different clients, what is it you like? They like murder mysteries or they like sports themed stories. And I just go and look through. They like adventure stories, and all of that is available in a comic or graphic novel medium as well. And it is available online. The question that was asked before, stop sharing for a second, about how do we get folks access? There's an e-card category for card registration. So if you have someone if someone comes to your libraries, and I don't know that for every library there's a different route, but if they're coming to you to say, I don't have a library card, I certainly think you should be promoting the library cards actively now. They can register online through whatever process you guys have. But if there's any, a shortcut is also they're not providing enough, like for a school who wants to get a lot of kids registered quickly, you could do a 6-month e-card, which is one of the new evergreen templates that's available. So they could just have the online access, and then when the world is a better place, they can come in and register for their full card, because I know you want to have your community members register for your card. I can send something out to everybody on this list right now afterwards, because I just saw this notice about that e-template. It may be familiar to many of you. What was unfamiliar to me. And I do that for adult developing readers. So there, particularly now, we have people who are in our Read Better tutoring program. If they have the digital wherewithal to get connected, we can get them a card and they can go forward. Someone's trying to get it. We can get them a card and they can go forward and start reading some of these materials online. But in that case, we're really trying to help them curate what would be accessible for them. So being familiar with the different titles and series, understanding how welcoming and engaging Archie is, and sort of and I guess wholesome, actually, many of the themes are, is also an important thing to know. I know I have a lot of adult developing readers who don't want to read dark stuff. You know, they don't want to get depressed. They want to feel light about this. Archie is lighter than my Neil Gaiman graphic novels, I just got to say. And certainly a lot of the manga is accessible. I wanted to share, just go back to sharing my screen for a second. In addition to looking at what's available in Hoopla and Comic Books Plus, we also I wanted to make sure you knew how to get here. So I'm directing people to the Listen, Read, and Watch tab. I mean, many of you may have these things on your shelves, but if you have not accessed them online, make sure that you've gone here and you know how to access it, so you can represent that to your clients. And someone was saying there's also, I have not used them on Overdrive, but there are comics and graphic novels in Overdrive as well. So Comic Books Plus is here. And I think I'd heard that not a lot of people are going here. Maybe I find it pretty substantial, but Hoopla seems to be the comic book source of choice of late. So, but I would know both, and we need to see traffic on both to keep them accessible to us. So that's where I was going for that. But I also placed on the Youth Services Wiki a couple of tools that Nancy gave us. Nancy, do you want to narrate these things, the comic book tools, and how an Archie comic book is made?
Sure. There's, various steps, and children, adults are always very curious on how a comic book is created. So this is just, some simple,
there we go.
So it's just a very simple little ditto that I shared with Elena. So it's pretty straightforward there. But if you could show the other ones that help give support, because with comics, everyone wants to draw.
Let me see if I linked the right one, Nancy. Did I? Yes, I did. Okay.
No, I don't think it's that. No, it's one that has pages of body parts, faces. But if it's not there, we can get to it.
I obviously didn't link the right one. So
okay. But it shows eyebrows and mouths and body parts. So that's a lot of fun for, an at-home activity. And then having fun with the Anamana Pia words. But one of the great tools that comic book people use is the speech bubbles. So I put in the package the various speech bubbles. Elena, the last time we talked, she said she had Bolt. I said, wrap that in the noise speech bubble. So you can find that in the package to, introduce how to make your words come alive. Because when you write something, you want people to read it. So I strongly believe in the tools that go into making a comic book, and utilizing those speech bubbles to bring sound and emotion to the word. So, if you're going to say Bolt, stylize the word and wrap it in this noise speech bubble. It will give an extra, extra feeling to that platform you're creating.
It was also Nancy's sort of talking about making comics that reminded me that we've all done, or many of us have done programs too, make your own zine, make your own comic. There are websites out there that have a lot of sort of backgrounds and tools that people can design with. Though I gotta say, when I was little, you take some paper, you fold it, you draw some lines and make a booklet. That's still an important activity and a wonderful gateway to expression. And these websites that are out there that we've teed up on the Youth Services Wiki post are things that you can go to. When I post Nancy's a document, it's got also things to trace around and use to create your own comic. This would be a great project to remind people that they can do. I think this could be an online thing that you could do with certain age groups to sort of show them some stuff that they can design and create. I'm sure schools are also engaged in this. Krishna, you recently curated this whole list of materials. Is there anything that you wanted to call out?
Yeah, I did a little bit of searching around and just pulled together some things that I found. But there are articles that you can find. There are actual tools that you can find as well. And the one thing I want to point out is that there are resources on here to make comics on a computer, but there's also just as many types of programs that you could run in person where you could draw a comic from scratch. The EBSCO article there, 5 Ideas for Graphic Novel Library Programs, mentions doing a decoupage comic, so actually cannibalizing some other comics or newspapers or whatever you have around to create your own. So I think there's a range of you can create comics through a range of abilities. You don't even have to be creating them. Like you could do like a book group, a discussion group. So it's if you're like me and you can't draw for anything, then there are options out there too.
Yeah, but what I like to say, Christian, when I hear people say that, if you can draw letters, you can draw. It's just taking that line and putting it in, the shape. So if you look at Archie's face, you can see, an upside down, you, and then connecting. So have confidence, because I know you can draw letters. That means you can draw. Just have to have the patience. But I did provide some papers with support on shapes of mouths, nose, eyes, and face. But it's all just a line going in a certain direction, and you have control over it. And it does not have to look like, anyone that, looking at Archie figures is a great representation of proportions, but it doesn't have to look like that. Make it look like your lines and have it belong to you. So don't be so hard on yourself. You can draw.
If any of you have gone to ALA in the last couple of years, which unfortunately is canceled this year, I've always been amazed by the zine tables, where there are just all of these homegrown publications, some of them very graphically oriented, some of them, dense text folded into a tight little, booklet. But it really sort of caught me to think of how I tend to still think of a book as the thing that has the binding and is all printed, published, and finished. But the maker opportunity, the decoupage comic book, gee, that's what I did. I cut stuff out, just to get to that sort of free form expression is just really cool. And a lot of little kids can draw a picture before they can really spell a word. So, allowing them to express the idea and the creativity that they have and to do something that is polished for them and also for us, because I'm not going to get, my artwork isn't going to get printed in Archie Comics, but I can create something and offer it to others, which is really just the maker moment, and the opportunity to be generous with our ideas is just I think a great area for programming for all age groups, from adults all the way back down to children. Someone had a question that I find intriguing, that some graphic novels are coming out on audio. I guess if the story is robust, that could be pretty awesome. Is anyone else sort of tapping those or familiar with those? So if you have any other thing that you want to offer about using comics and programming, this is really an opportunity to sort of share with your colleagues. Susie, how about you?
Thinking about it now that we're back here talking about it, definitely maybe try to do something online in the next month or so. But when we get back into our regular library scheduling and into the building, I'm excited about comics again.
Yeah.
So this was great. I needed this today. I really did. So
Yeah.
I'm happy that.
Actually, can I just
And
thank you
remember,
all?
Earth Day is coming up in
Right.
the month of April. So, this story, Getting Drastic with Plastic, may be, a good start if you wanted to do it through Hoopla. But contact me. I have a free teacher's study guide that maybe can help you create an activity, something simple for Earth Day.
Nancy, if I could link that
Thank
teacher
you.
study guide on our website, that would on that web posting, that would be great. I was going to thank you. I'm looking at a couple of libraries represented here. You all have rich graphic novel collections. They include Archie comic collections and other things. I'm the one who's coming in there checking them out and blocking everybody because it's there. You all have different collections, and I don't know that we've had a sort of a collection discussion across libraries specifically about graphic novels, but there's actually so much out there. I wonder if that's something that people want to have an opportunity to do, maybe when we reopen, or now as you're trying to figure out how to spend your some of your dollars for resources. Folks, you should be taking a look at the chat as well. There's some recommendations for Scott McCloud's books. Understanding Comics and Reinventing Comics and Making Comics. Those are all really terrific books that maybe I can sort of try to grab this chat before the session ends so that we can take any of these notes. And then some more Archie comics are going to get posted. Yay. I'm purchased. So good job, Nancy. And there is a reminder from Rio Osana that New York residents can get a free New York Public Library card. And I'm not familiar with what graphic novel resources are there on their side, but please use ours first so we have the record that they're of interest, but also see what's available over there as well. All right, any other comments or questions from the folks in this call? All right. There should be a record. Yes, there is a chat record at the end. All right, folks, thank you so much for your time today. Nancy and Dean, thank you.